rookie welterweight veterans battle it out in the small cage. We have the 2008 near Olympian, the king of kung fu, but really wushu san the champ. It is Muslim Salikhov taking on Danish Dynamite, Nicolas Dalby. And if there's two great nicknames in the welterweight division, it's the Argentine Dagger and Danish Dynamite. And both of those guys found the nicknames later on in life. And what I saw out of Nicolas Dalby later on in life, his last time out against Warlley Alves, who at times fights like Muslim Salikhov, man, did Dalby ever look good in that fight? I was so impressed on the rewatch at how good Dalby looked, pressuring forward, looking like Mac from Always Sunny, because for Dalby, you always know he's going to be always just breathing so damn loud into the mics, and they pick it all up. But for Dalby, it's not necessarily the takedown defense that gets him wins. It's a lot of volume on the outside and a lot of on his way in all the time, and he crashes forward into his opponents. You saw that to maximum full effect where a fight had to be stopped due to blood loss against Ross Houston, and that is one of two no contests on the record of Nicolas Dalby. But the crazy part of it for Dalby, since he's come back into the UFC, it's a nice little record. He's got a no contest against Jesse Ronson, which originally was a loss, but Ronson, it's overturned due to some USADA complications. He had beaten Alex Oliveira on the Copenhagen card, which had a main event of Jared Cannonier in that one. Dalby looked great in that fight against Oliveira. He gets a win over Daniel Rodriguez, which was a really, really chintzy one. He loses to Tim Means, and then his last two times out, he outlasts old Claudio Silva, and he looked really good against Warlley Alves in a very, very hard-fought fight by both of those guys. It was a split decision win for Dalby.
I think it is fair to say, though, Dalby's two last wins are over guys whose best days are behind them. So for Dalby...
I don't know about that for Alves.
Warlley Alves is not getting better, though. Warlley Alves is in his mid-30s. Like, Warlley Alves, I don't think the grass is greener.
You're thinking about, he looked really good against Munir Lazez recently.
But we're talking about his level of competition being reduced to such to where he's not really the fighter that he once was. Like, Warlley Alves was fighting Randy Brown. Randy Brown is a ranked fighter. Like, he is a very good one at that. I don't think Warlley Alves, and I think a lot of people would back me up on this, is not in his prime.
Randy Brown wasn't ranked then. Colby Covington wasn't ranked then. Warlley Alves never fought very big ranked fighters.
But he was fighting guys who all had high expectations, who all had high ceilings. At the time, all those fighters were thought of as very good fighters, and Warlley Alves himself was. Warlley Alves is not in the prime of his career by any means, and neither is Claudio. So for Nicolas Dalby and for Muslim Salikhov, this is an oddly important fight, I think, for both guys, even though Dalby has had two wins, and Salikhov's coming off a win himself, because for Salikhov, the last time he did fight sort of one of those fringe guys on the rankings was that Li Jingliang loss. And I know he had some areas of success in the matchup.
Won the first round handily.
But when Li Jingliang was able to get on the inside, use his jab to the body, and answer with the overhand, Muslim did not do a great job striking on the back foot once Li Jingliang was able to establish that inside distance. So for Salikhov, it really is going to come into, can he keep his back off the cage? Because I think Nicolas Dalby can do some real damage, not only with his striking, but with the threat of his grappling too, if Salikhov is the much more stationary target. But if Salikhov can, I'm not saying completely stay away from the two black lines, like he's going to have to back up at some point, but maintain his distance in the center of the cage and use his movement to where he's not letting Dalby completely cut him off, I could see Salikhov, and this is the weird thing, I don't think he's going to run away with striking numbers by any means. I don't think it's going to be like a Max Holloway type performance, but the threat of the big power shot and him landing enough shots of his own on the outside, I think it'd be enough for him to go out there and win rounds consistently.
And people are going to discount Muslim Salikhov's last win against Andrea Fialho because of what's happened to Fialho's career in the short UFC time that it has been. And if you look at Salikhov, what does he do so well in that fight? He lands the kicks to back off the boxer, and then from there establishes distance. He ends up getting the spin kick to the body that ends up getting the finish. But if you look at it for Salikhov, he did punch his ticket to the UFC the same way that Israel Adesanya did, by a spinning knockout win over Melvin Gillard. Salikhov then loses to Canadian-Cuban wrestler Alex Garcia, but then he goes on a wild win streak. Beats Ricky Rainey, beats Nurdin Taleb, beats Loriano Staropoli, beats Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos in a terrible fight, beats Francisco Trinaldo in a bad fight, and then against Li Jingliang, beats him by striking and wrestling in the first round. In the second round, Salikhov's walking down Li, goes to land a jab that gets slipped and then countered with the right hand by Li that rocks Salikhov, and then you ultimately have Li getting the finish. Now, in that fight, Li Jingliang ranked 14th in the division, and Salikhov was favored to beat him as the older fighter, so a little bit crazier to see, but Salikhov's last time out, he is a favorite against Andrea Fialho and gets the big finish win. And if you look at it, technique for technique's sake. Muslim Salikhov being an honored master of sport, Wushu Sanda, it's not enough to say that. The guy has the technique videos out there. You see it in his fights. But the sneakiest part of his game is that threat of the takedown from Salikhov. And he is very powerful when he goes for them. I mean, he picked up and threw Li Jingliang in their fight when he was going for it.
Li Jingliang still did a really good job at striking in the match.
And Nicolas Dalby
you can have the backup
struggles.
that you have, but still, it's not like Salikhov's just the greatest striker we've ever seen at welterweight. Like, he does have struggles, especially on the inside. If you can just force him to be a boxer, his hands are a little bit looping. He is going to throw wider shots. So I do think there are some susceptibilities to his style of striking.
What fight did you see that in other than the Li Jingliang fight where he struggled with it?
Well, in a lot of them, that's the thing. That's why I bring up, he's not going to wow you with the volume numbers. The threat of a lot of his strikes is going to be enough to where his opponents are just going to be willing to throw a lot of wild volume in there. But again, when Lee got on the inside, there wasn't a lot of threat with the big power shots of Salikhov. He did a great job with his boxing.
It'll be interesting to see, again, for both of these guys. Muslim Salikhov, he has cross-trained at a lot of big gyms throughout the world. American Top Team for this one. For Nicolas Dalby, Rumble Sports in his native Copenhagen. If you do look at it, Salikhov favored in the matchup. Both guys looking to string together some wins all of a sudden. If we do consider the fan vote on Topology to try and get a little bit of a finger on the pulse of what the fans are thinking, I set the over-under. I say over-under 75% Salikhov.
I think it'll be over.
It's going to be over. It is over. 643 total votes, 84% Salikhov, 65% by decision for the 16% that have Dalby, 79% by decision. And the reason I bring up Dalby's last fight as a little bit of a litmus test, yes, I know Dalby, he's had bonuses in the UFC, had a fight of the night draw against Darren Till years ago in that first UFC tenure. Dalby's one of those guys that if he's doing that striking forward, if he pressures his opponent up against the fence, he can do a lot of damage with the guy backed up against the fence. If Dalby's backed up against the fence, nothing happens. And he's held up a lot, and he struggles in that position. So we'll see how that plays out for both these guys, because there are times where Salikhov is behind the black line, and he waits and he waits and he waits, and then he can't get off his own shot. So for me, I do have Muslim Salikhov in the fight. I think he can make Dalby pay with some of his power shots. We had never seen Dalby really get like finished, dropped, submitted until that Jesse Ronson fight. So we will see how that plays out for him in this matchup, but I will go with Salikhov in the fight here.
This is how I look at this fight. It's going to be a close fight when it goes to decision. I don't think it's going to end inside the distance, and I think the significant strike numbers are going to be really close on both sides. But the difference is, not every significant strike is created equally. That's why MMA judging is weird, because you can't just look at numbers on a page and tell you the whole story. I think the strikes that Salikhov's going to land are going to be a little bit bigger and a little bit more effective, so I agree with you. I do have Salikhov in the matchup, but this should be a really fun fight, because again, both guys have had kind of taste at those top 50 opponents, and for Salikhov, 39 years old, and Dalby too, no spring chicken either, 38, so you wonder how many more chances they are going to get at that top level of opposition, so big fight for both guys.
And a happy birthday to Muslim Salikhov, who just turned 39, 6-2 in the UFC versus a 5-3-1 with a no contest. Nicolas Dalby, Matt, both of us going with King of Kung Fu in the fight. But you let us know who you have in this matchup, because I was so amped up when Dalby came back to fight Alex Oliveira. Awesome to see him back on the big stage and in a matchup at the UFC's Apex. That's a little bit of a da-da-da. But, Matt, some big-time fights left on this card, including one Nicolas Mata taking on Manuel Torres. You're not going to want to miss that one. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say.
Let's get into it.